All right, energy. What is up? It's Jan back at it again with another nerdy bookish video. This is gonna be my June wrap up. Got my handy dandy Stitch mug that my hair now matches. This is late as usual, but I'm caught up with vlogs pretty much. I've been working on that rather than working on my sit down videos. But here we are, better late than never, as I always say. If you're new here, I do my wrap ups in the reread, rewrite, burn tag method. I've been doing this for a couple years now. It's more fun for me, so we're sticking with it. Basically, I put all my book titles that I read that month on little slips of paper, put them in the Stitch mug. I pull them out 3 at a time and I say whether I'd reread, rewrite, or burn them, which is a little spin on Fuck, Marry, Kill, but make it bookish. You'll see how it goes. For now, I have my recap of the month in my journal that's falling apart. I need to get back into my reading journal because a lot of people got me stickers recently and sent them to me as gifts for my birthday, and I just need to get back on top of it and actually put effort in it again because I've been half-assing them the past few months. Anyway, my recap. After reading 30 plus books for 2 months in a row, I felt weird. Not weird, but like, I felt disappointed. We're just gonna come right out and say it. I felt disappointed that I read 23 books only in June. But then I realized that's still a lot of books. What are you talking about? And I only read 1 graphic novel in that 23, which, you know, doesn't discredit, like I always say, a book's a book's a book. I'm just saying, like, they're obviously quicker reads, and that's how I get 30 plus books some months. I try to read at least 15 to 20 every month, so like reaching 30 is usually by the help of graphic novels and manga, but I still, you know, read a lot of novels and novellas to hit 20. But anyway, I only read 23. Number of pages, physical pages. Okay, there's no strict format as to how I calculate pages, okay? I keep track of my physical pages every single day, and I try to hit 100 every day, and I'm usually successful, unless I'm going through it. But sometimes I keep track of audiobook pages if I finish books in a day type thing, like for readathons. Like when I do my Lair readathon every month for my Patreon, I do keep track of audiobook pages. It depends on the situation, but basically I added them all up and I got 7,049 pages. So for 23 books, that's a lot of pages. Number of BIPOC authors, 4, which is really bad. I guess I just like stopped being intentional with it because in May I was so intentional with it because it was AAPI Heritage Month, so I made sure to read the majority. Like, I only read a couple that weren't BIPOC authors, so I did really badly with that this month, but it's okay, we'll bounce back. Best book of the month. We're not surprised. No one's surprised. Divine Rivals by Rebecca Ross. I have not shut up about this book since I finished it. I've gotten several people to read it and I'm very proud of that. It's like one of my biggest accomplishments of the year because this book deserves it all. This is the Fairy Loot edition, and thank God for this Fairy Loot edition because I wouldn't have read it otherwise because I hate the US cover. Granted, I did buy it anyway so I can annotate it because I don't want to ruin the pages with tabs. 5 stars, obviously. Number 1 of the year so far. It'll probably stay that way because this lives in my head rent-free. When I say rent-free, I mean like I am feeding this bitch every day free. Okay, this is basically about these magical letters being written between Iris and who she thinks is her brother, who went off to fight this war of gods, but in reality it's this dude named Roman who is her rival at this newspaper. They're rivals because they're fighting for this promotion. She doesn't find out that it's him until way later in the book, but obviously she signs the letters with her name. He keeps his identity anonymous. You find out why these letters are getting sent to him instead of her brother. They go, I don't want to spoil anything. Basically, in the background, there's this war of the gods, and I didn't want to read this because of that. And I was like super intimidated by the word gods and war, and I was like, I'm not going to be interested. And then I heard letters, and I was like, I love letters in books. Needless to say, it ended up working out. This is so good, and everyone I've been telling to read it has given it 4 stars or higher. If you haven't already, take it from me. Take the rec, read it, and let me know that you read it because of me, because it makes me feel good every single time. And the sequel, I was crying because I had to wait until April 30th, 2024. Rebecca Ross just announced that it got pushed to December of this year, so I don't have to wait too long. Hopefully I can get an arc. Even if I don't, it's not April of next year anymore, and I am elated. In my head, I'm gonna think that the reason it got pushed up is because more and more people have been buying it and reading it because of me. I'm just gonna take the credit, it's fine. Worst book. I don't even have it, but it's a graphic novel I read from the library. It's called Home After Dark by David Small, I believe. I give this 1 star.
Did I still give it 2 stars?
I still gave it 2 stars. I think it was because of the art style that I gave it 2 stars. And it did talk about different traumas. There was a lot. There was a lot of brutal like bullying and homophobia, and there was sexual harassment and racism, animal cruelty. So just beware of all the trigger warnings. One of the things that I didn't like was how the Asian characters were drawn. I feel like the way they were depicted by a white male illustrator was just not sitting with me right. It just looked and felt a little bit racist. I wasn't a fan of that. I also felt like some of the things were unnecessary. Like, this wasn't a memoir or anything. It was fiction. And I feel like some things were just done for no, like the animal cruelty was definitely, like all animal cruelty is unnecessary, don't get me wrong. But it didn't like drive the plot in any way. It was just a random scene and then get cut to the next one. So things like that, it just felt very disjointed. I mean, I empathize with the character. The main character went through so much, like an abusive father, just neglect and poverty and everything. It definitely hit the feels, but I just wouldn't recommend it to like anybody. The nonfiction that I read, I try to read at least 1 nonfiction a month. I read Over the Top by Jonathan Van Ness, who is an actor in Queer Eye, which I haven't watched. I just wanted to read a memoir by a queer person because it was Pride Month. I listened to it via audio, gave it 4 stars, and it's rare for me to give memoirs less than 5 stars because that just feels weird, right? But it's just, it didn't have, you know, super fantastic writing. A lot of the parts were just a silly, goofy, fun time, but obviously Jonathan also talked about his experiences with homophobia and family bullying, essentially, and how no one really believed in him when it came to acting and his experience with that and everything. There were some sad parts in that as well, but in the audiobook, like even his tone of voice was very energetic, very bubbly. I like my memoirs to be more like emotional as opposed to funny, if that makes sense. Like sad emotions as opposed to funny. I don't know. I just like learning about people's trauma, I guess, because that's like relatable. Something's wrong with me. Something is wrong with me. And then I also try to read on my Kindle as much as I can per month, so I have been keeping track of which books per month that I read on there because I want to make use of Kindle Unlimited and just like my Kindle in general because obviously it's kind of an investment. I read this book for Unmuted and Unhinged Sprints with Joey, which are on Patreon, and they're basically sprints, but Joey and I unmute and we have ambiance in the background, so then we read extreme horror novellas, sometimes just horror novellas in general, and live react. And it's a fun time. People enjoy it, so it's stuck ever since like the 1st or 2nd month of my Patreon being up. This month we read 100% Match by Patrick C. Harrison III. Surprisingly, I gave this 5 stars. It was super short, but it's basically about this gross old guy who knows a lot of statistics. Okay, I say gross because he literally does very gross things. Like, he works as a burger fryer and he like puts disgusting shit, literally sometimes shit, in people's food just for fun, just because he's sadistic and disgusting. And it was entertaining. And then the end was my favorite part, which pushed it to 5 stars. If you're looking for a short extreme horror, that one's good. It'll take you like an hour to read. I got an ARC for Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher from Tor, so thank you so much, Tor Nightfire. This was also a novella. It was a fantasy novella, and I gave it 2 stars. It made me realize that I prefer T. Kingfisher's horror writing as opposed to the more fantasy side of the spectrum. I read What Moves the Dead, Nettle and Bone, and A House with Good Bones, and now Thornhedge. Thornhedge and Nettle and Bone were not my favorite, but I really, really enjoyed her 2 horror novels that I read. Well, novella and novel. So I'm gonna stick with reading like the Hollow Places and the Twisted ones. Maybe if someone convinces me to read the cozy fantasy series that she wrote, then I will, but it's not dire. But I do love her writing. Also on my Kindle, I read an ARC, also from Tor, for Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree, and y'all, when I tell you I squealed for this ARC, unfortunately it was not 5 stars as I was expecting. I gave it 3 stars, and that was so disappointing for me. It just didn't hit the way Legends and Lattes did. This was a lot more plot, less cozy, and that's the appeal and charm of Legends and Lattes, you know? I just wanted more of that, but this one had a lot more like fantasy plot that I didn't really care for. It's the prequel to Legends and Lattes, so there was a lot of like background info and how this character got here and blah 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 blah. But it did still have cozy elements. You know, they're trying to revamp this bookshop, and the bookshop was super cute, and it's across this bakery, and then there's this like budding romance and all the cute little creatures talking and making wholesome friendships and all that. So it had everything that Legends and Lattes had as well, but it wasn't as cozy. It's just like heavier on the plot, which I didn't like. And then I also read an ARC for The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This was provided to me by NetGalley. I read it like the week before it was released and I gave it 4 stars. I was pleasantly surprised. I'm so happy that Riley Sager is back with his really good twists, and it was twist after twist after twist that it gave me whiplash at the end. But it was such a good story. I'm sure you've heard of it. I don't even want to talk about the synopsis because everyone's talking about it. Everyone's been reading it. It was definitely worth it. Much better than House Across the Lake. This also had like some of my favorite atmosphere with the gothic vibes and everything, so really enjoyed that. Buzzword-a-thon. The buzzword for June was other. This is a reading challenge hosted by Kayla from Books and Lala, and I tried, okay? I tried 3 times, 3 different books with the word other in the title, and I DNF'd all 3 of them. So I gave up. I DNF'd Other People's Houses, Other Terrors, and Love and Other Disasters. I could have tried physically reading Vampires, Hearts, and Other Dead Things. I did check that out from the library, but after the 3rd DNF, I was like, I'm done. I'm not even gonna try anymore. I did not read a 500+ page book, which is like a loose goal. Classic, also a loose goal. Didn't do that. And that's it for the recap. Moving on to the actual wrap up. All right, the first 3. We've got Lessons in Chemistry by Bonnie Garmis. This was one of my Patreon buddy read picks months ago, and I finally finished it. Your Driver is Waiting by Priya Guns, and then In the Company of Witches by Oralee Wallace, I want to say the author's name is. I would burn Your Driver is Waiting because I listened to this on audio. The audiobook was kind of annoying. The main character was insufferable. I didn't really care for the plot. It was basically about this main character who drove basically Uber. Her main 3 personality traits is that she's lesbian, she works out a lot, and she thinks this one girl is hot. I mean, and she's a driver, because that was basically the entire setting, is her driving this car and meeting all these customers, and then one of her customers, I think, or either that or she meets her, I don't remember, but she thinks this one girl's hot and she can't stop talking about her. She talks about her muscles and her workouts. It was just not good. I gave this one 2 stars, and it was my first read of June, so that was disappointing. It was queer, it was sapphic, so I read it. I don't remember why I even picked it up in the first place. I think it was just available on Libby when I was scrolling through the available now section. I would reread In the Company of Witches. Super fucking cute. Gilmore Girls vibes, apparently Practical Magic vibes, but definitely Good Witch vibes. Practical Magic, I say apparently because I haven't read or watched it yet, but I will. I will soon. Witchy vlog is hopefully coming soon. But yeah, it's a cozy mystery set in this small town during the autumn season. This woman's aunts own this bed and breakfast. It was just so cozy. I didn't even really care about the murder mystery itself, just the characters. I'm very much a character-driven story type of gal, and this made me cry because I was so invested in these characters, and the woman's husband is dead by the time you start the book. She like talks about it at some point, and it made me sob. I couldn't even tell you the plot. I didn't really care. I didn't care. I was there for the vibes. I'm gonna read the sequel. I already have it from the library. Then Lessons in Chemistry, I would rewrite and take out my least favorite trope. That's it. I gave this 4 stars because of that. Also because this kind of felt like 3 separate novellas. It didn't flow too seamlessly in my opinion. And there were also some parts that just dragged on, but I did appreciate all the like feminist discussions and bringing awareness to the misogyny that goes on in the STEM field. I mean, it made me laugh, hit the feels. The ending, the twist at the end made my jaw drop. I really enjoyed it. I highlighted and tabbed a shit ton. I mean, I would also reread this eventually, but yeah, I would rewrite it to not have that trope. If you know, you know. If you don't, you can DM me. The next 3 books. We have Robber Girl by S.T. Gibson, Vengeful by V.E. Schwab, You Shouldn't Have Come Here by Geneva Rose. I would burn You Shouldn't Have Come Here. Listen to it on audio. I gave that one 2 stars. It was gonna be 1 star for a while because I'm wholeheartedly convinced that it's mismarketed as a thriller. It's more of a dark romance. But the ending pushed it to 2 stars for me. I really didn't see that coming for some reason. Basically, it's about this woman who travels, I think like once a year or something, or a couple times a year, and stays at a random Airbnb, and then she ends up at this ranch Airbnb in Washington. Was it Washington? Wyoming. It was Wyoming. The landlord is this creepy man who falls for her. The twist at the end was really fucking good. That's all I'm gonna say. But it did read like a romance for a lot of the book, which I found jarring and just unexpected, and I didn't like it. It made me uncomfortable. He did feel like Joe Goldberg at times, and I usually love that. But then like to an extent, you know, when it gets in romance territory, I'm just like, please. I'm here for a thriller, you know? Robber Girl I would reread because it's short. It's S.T. Gibson. I gave this one 4 stars. I thought it was a cute little sapphic fairy tale retelling of the Snow Queen. The characters were funny. It kept my attention. I read it for a 24-hour readathon, so I read it in like one sitting. And I love S.T. Gibson, like I said. I'll link my interview with her down below. She's the author of A Dowry of Blood. So that's a cool thing that I did. This would be a great read for the winter. If you're doing any 24-hour readathons in the winter, this is a short little novella. It's set in Sweden. It's sapphic, like I said. The dialogue's good. The characters are cool. It was easy to follow. I would reread that. And then I would rewrite Vengeful, make it shorter. This was way too dragged on. Like, I was hooked in the first half, but then the second half, it just felt so convoluted and there were so many characters for no reason and not enough of the characters that I wanted. This is a sequel to Vicious, if you were unaware, and I love Vicious. 5 stars. Vengeful, I gave 3 stars. Towards the end, I was like, I just want this to be over, please. There was just a lot going on that didn't need to happen. It felt more controlled in Vicious. This felt like everything in the kitchen sink. You know what I mean? Can't really say much because it's a sequel, but Vicious is basically about, well, they're in here too, but they're basically about these people with superpowers called extraordinaries. In this one, there's someone on the loose trying to kill all these extraordinaries for a specific reason. There are like multiple subplots going on too, and there are these 2 women. This one woman really hates men. It's obvious and it gets to the point where it's annoying how much she talks about how much she hates men. So there was that, but it has good quotes. It has a good plot overall. It just didn't feel as fun and riveting and fast-paced as Vicious. V.E. Schwab announced that there's gonna be a 3rd one eventually. Not sure when, but I think it's called Victorious. So that's cool. Pick the next 3. All the Dead Lie Down. I actually read this from the library, but one of my patrons, Destiny, got me this for my birthday, so thank you so much. And then Home After Dark. Obviously gonna burn it already. I already talked about it. And Catherine House. Okay. So this is most likely going to be my top 10 of the year. I don't know yet though. It's definitely up there in the candidates for that list. This is my new favorite YA horror for sure. If you liked Horrid, you'd love this. House of Hollow, you'd love this. Tripping Arcadia, anything with like nature horror, you'd love this. Like T. Kingfisher books, you'd love this. It was just so eerie. I don't even really want to talk about it much, but there's like hair involved. There's like family legacies involved. Their family secrets. I'm not going to say much, but there's like nature horror and supernatural things going on in this house, in this family, and this girl works for this family because she is an orphan, I believe. Would highly recommend. I give this 5 stars. Would reread, and then I'd rewrite Catherine House. I gave this 4 stars. This was my book club pick for May, and our live show was in June, so I read it in June. I gave it 4 stars because it didn't give me answers at the end, and I am okay with an open-ended ending, but this had too many unanswered questions to the point where it was annoying. But I really enjoyed the audiobook. I would rewrite it though to give some answers, is what I'm saying. The audiobook was really good, like I said. One of those books that appear on every dark academia list that you find on the internet, and I'm glad I finally got around to reading it. Catherine House is this like boarding school type thing, but there's like all this suspicious, unknown shit going on. People die and then disappear, and there are like these experiments going on, and you just really don't know. It's very culty vibes, and the audiobook really enhances the reading experience because there's like chanting and things like that, and the narrator does a phenomenal job. I don't know if I'd reread this anytime soon, but I mean, I'm keeping it on my shelves because it was creepy, it was dark academia, it was right up my alley. I just would rewrite it because I was confused for a lot of time. But to be fair, everyone was confused when we did our live show, including my guest, Bree from Bree Sherry Reads. But we had a good time discussing it. It was so much fun being confused together all at the same time. It just left too many loose ends that I wish were answered. Like, it's fine if the ending was open-ended and not fully tied in a neat bow, but there were some scenes that just like ended abruptly for no reason. Or maybe there was a reason. I don't know, because you don't get told anything in that book. The next 3, we have Over the Top, which was the nonfiction that I talked about. Bookshops and Bone Dust, again, already talked about it. And then Suffer the Children by Craig DeLuey. I just uploaded the vlog where Joey and I buddy read this book. I gave this book 2 stars. so I would burn this. This was pitched to me as Vampire Children, and I was like, okay, sold. And it was on my 12 Recs by 12 Friends, so I finally read it because Joey was also interested in it. I actually gave Joey my copy because I just could not handle it. I was just over it. I was annoyed. Everyone was annoying. I really liked the beginning when no one knew what was going on, but then once people figured it out and then did the most for these dead, decaying children, I was just like, that's it for me, folks. I'm gonna link that vlog down below so you could see my in-depth, spoiler-free thoughts, but I would burn it. I would reread Over the Top because rewriting someone's life is just weird. No one does that, so I would reread that. There were a couple quotes that I really liked. One of the quotes that made my favorite quotes Patreon post for that month, I do that too, by the way, on Patreon. We're called The Lair, we're vampire themed. All the links are down below. One of my favorite quotes of the month was from that book, so I would reread that, definitely audibly, again, probably. And then Bookshops and Bone Dust I'd rewrite just to make it more cozy, less plot, like Legends and Lattes. Okay. Divine Rivals, obviously a reread. We're not even gonna, so that's my reread. Oh man, Night of Cake and Puppets by Laini Taylor. Fuck, I really love that one too. Gave that one 5 stars. And then Even Though I Knew the End by C.L. Polk. So since I'm rereading Divine Rivals, no question about it, I would rewrite this, make it longer. Susanna and Mick need their own novel, full-blown novel. This was a cute little love story between my 2 favorite characters in the series and one of my favorite couples of all time in books, and I just love this, and they need their own full-blown novel. Like, I would read 500 pages of Susanna and Mick. I love them so much. I love their banter, both their personalities. They're just literally my favorite fictional couple, one of my favorite fictional couples. But yeah, this was just a little cute romantic love story. It's like a fantasy romance novella. This is in the Daughter of Smoke and Bone trilogy. If I would rewrite it, make it longer. And then Even Though I Knew the End was another novella I read. Was it for a 24-hour readathon? I don't remember. I gave that one 2 stars. I would burn it. I got it from the library, thank God. I just thought there was gonna be an actual vampire in it, but I don't think there was, at least. I could see the appeal in it. It's a sapphic historical fantasy with a serial killer on the loose. One of the women is very passionate about photography. The writing was good. I just wasn't a fan of the story. Then we have Burn Down, Rise Up by Vincent Torrado. There's Someone Inside Your House by Rachel Harrison? Rachel something. Stephanie Perkins. Stephanie, or Someone Inside Your House. It's a hot pink cover, y'all have seen it. And then The Only One Left by Riley Sager. I would reread The Only One Left. Like I said, gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it and I loved all the twists. I'm still debating on buying a physical copy, like even just from Book of the Month. It is one of my favorite Riley Sager books, but like, do I need to own it when it's like forever on my Kindle as an ARC? I don't know, not really, I guess. And I heard, well, I guess it was also in italics on the Kindle, but it's not as harsh on the eyes for me as an ebook. I just hate reading italics, and there's a lot of typed out passages because Lenora, who was accused of murdering her own family, she's paralyzed. She could only use one hand, her left hand, to type on this typewriter to tell her story to this caregiver. That's pretty much the premise. So there's a lot of italics, so I don't know if I really want it physically, but I would reread that book regardless. There's Someone Inside Your House. I would rewrite the ending. I gave There's Someone Inside Your House 3 stars. I watched the movie adaptation on Netflix halfway through the audiobook, and it really helped, you know, visualizing everything, like the characters and all. And I liked comparing the similarities and differences because like the killer was different, some of the kills were different, the ending was different, but they both sucked in the movie and the book. So I would rewrite the ending, but basically it's like a slasher YA set in the fall. If you've read Clown in a Cornfield, I like this one better than that book, but it's the same like vibe. And then Burn Down, Rise Up, I would burn. I just burn. I listened to this mostly on audio. I followed along for some of it. I did go to a Vincent Torrado event though. That's why I picked this up this month. They were talking with Darcy Coates and it was super fun. It was just at a Barnes and Noble. It was fun hearing them talk to each other and about their books and stuff. Just wasn't a fan of the plot being like a whole game situation, and I wasn't really invested in the characters at all. But if you're looking for like a fun, quick YA horror with like a bunch of creatures in New York and there are a couple like little subplots. There's a romance in there. It's by a queer BIPOC author. I mean, there's this, but I personally didn't like it much, but I still gave it 3 stars. It's not gonna stick with me. I'm probably gonna forget a lot of it. I was creeped out by the audiobook a little bit because the narrator would change their voice for some of the parts, like some of the creepy creatures, but it's nothing I'm gonna rave about. Next, 3. Okay, this is our last full round, and then it looks like we have 2 wild cards, so that's fun. Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher, Wayward by Amelia Hart, which was my June book club pick that I also read in June, and then The Sleeper and the Spindle by Neil Gaiman. Okay, to people's probably surprise, I would rewrite Wayward. Just take out a couple pregnancies, please. There were too many pregnancies in this. I understand the intent in order to like drive certain discussions about like, you know, feminism and things like that, actually in like the 3 different time periods that this focuses on. Less pregnancies, more witchiness. That's all I'm gonna say. I'm gonna leave the live show down below. It was with Steph from Stephanie Bookish. I have a spoiler-filled vlog dedicated to this book on Patreon. I do that with all my book club picks. And if you didn't know, I do run my own book club. It's called the Full Moon Book Club. The Full Moon Readathon is happening August 1st to 13th. That announcement video is down below as well. If you want to learn more about that and participate, I would love to have you. But the Full Moon Book Club live shows are on the full moon of every month. So just look up full moon July 2023, and that's when the live show is typically. Sometimes I change the dates, rarely, but sometimes. Like August, the full moon is August 1st, but I'm gonna do my first of the month sprints. So my full moon live show is gonna be the 2nd, which technically it's still gonna be a full moon. All those announcements are always on my Instagram. If I remember, I put in the community tab on here. So sorry if you don't have an Instagram, but I just like literally forget to put it on the community tab. I'd probably reread, both of them are so short. Listen to The Sleeper and the Spindle on audio. I'd probably burn The Sleeper and the Spindle. Both of these, Thornhedge and that one, were both like fairy tale-esque, so this is really difficult. The Sleeper and the Spindle was an hour-long audiobook. It was recommended to me by my coworker after I asked her if she had any recommendations for like a really short audiobook that I can listen to in one sitting. And this one's narrated and written by Neil Gaiman, and it was very, very fairy tale-esque. It was a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, and I gave that one 3 stars. I gave Wayward 2 stars, by the way. Gave that one 3 stars. I just zoned out in that hour. Like, it was hard to pay attention because I really didn't care for the fairy tale thing, but it was an immersive, engaging audiobook because Neil Gaiman narrates really, really well. And then Thornhedge, I guess I'd have to reread. I would give T. Kingfisher another chance. I just feel like now that I know what I'm going into, because I didn't read the synopsis before reading that arc, I just knew it was short. I feel like now that I know what I'm getting into, reading her writing is going to be more of an enjoyable experience upon reread. But would I actually realistically reread it? No, because like I said, I gave it 2 stars. All right, the last 2 are Terms and Conditions by Lauren Asher and 100% Match by Patrick C. Harrison III. So for my wild cards, they could be any of the 3. Both of them could be the same one of the 3. It doesn't matter. So honestly, I would reread both of them. I gave Terms and Conditions 5 fucking stars. Both of them. I gave both of them 5 stars, actually. This is the 2nd book in the Dreamland Billionaire series, and this is a special 5 stars because this book has my least favorite trope, aka pregnancy, all throughout. My least favorite trope is actually unexpected pregnancy, and I think that's why, because I knew this would involve pregnancy. It was expected pregnancy. So that's why, oh god, I've said that word too many times. Now my fucking uterus is cramping. But this was super fucking cute. I was swooning, squealing, screaming, rooting for these fucking characters. I loved Declan and Iris. Iris was in Divine Rivals too. I knew that and then I forgot about it. This series is about this Disneyland thing called Dreamland. The owner of it was these 3 brothers' grandpa, and he died, so in his will he was like, okay, before you become CEO like you want, your task is to get married and have a baby. And so that's what he does, and it's a marriage of convenience with his assistant. I loved it. It's so quick, it's so good, so much better than The Fine Print, which is the first book, which I gave 3 stars, but I gave this 5 stars, and now I'm currently reading the 3rd one, the last installment, and I'm so fucking excited. I would absolutely reread that, and I would also reread this because this was a fun, silly, goofy time, and the end was brutal and definitely extreme horror-esque. I would absolutely reread this. It's so short, so it wouldn't take any time at all. That's that. This is Joey's copy, by the way. so I could reread it anytime. It's also on my Kindle. That's my June wrap up. If you read any of these books and agreed or disagreed with my thoughts, please comment down below. I would love to read all your comments. If you made it to the end of this video, let's just put a rainbow emoji in the comments down below, because I haven't used that all throughout Pride Month at all. So we'll put a rainbow emoji in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Hope y'all had a great day. Stay safe and stay spooky always, and I'll see y'all in my next one. Bye!